Welcome to another adventure of the Halftone Effect.
Save us!
Oh no!
Hi, gang, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Halftone Effect. After 8 years and now over 100 episodes, we're excited to be here tonight to be recording this special episode of the Halftone Effect. This is a recorded session that we've done. We've got an array of awesome talent joining in tonight to talk about their careers in independent comics. They have been on the show before, but they are here tonight to talk about where they are at the moment and where they're going. We've got some cool little tidbits from people who have been on before, and just some more insight into creating comic books and the indie community. We hope over the last 8 years that you've been able to get something from this series. It's been a huge effort and to get this out to you all, and we really hope you do enjoy it. So thank you for joining in over the last 8 years. Thank you for checking out the 100th episode, and I hope you enjoy this special episode of the Halftone Effect. Hi guys, welcome to the first panel for this evening. Tonight we're actually joined by a returning guest of the Halftone Effect and a very good friend of mine, Bradley Aiden. He is the creator of Super RBA. He's here to talk about his experience in the comics community and also give some tips and tricks away for people who are interested in getting into the comic book indie world. So without further ado, welcome in our guest, Bradley Aiden.
Hey everybody!
Hello, Brad. Whoa, I just
It's
cut
me,
you off.
Bradley Aiden. What's going on, man?
Thank you for joining in tonight with the podcast. It's our 100th episode, so it's great to have people coming back who have been on the show since the early days. You're up there with one of our very first guests to join into the podcast, which is exciting.
Very, very exciting to be back.
Now we're on to the 100th episode of the podcast.
What a milestone. It's been a hot minute since I've been on as well.
It would have been 2019, 2020? Last time you were on. So yeah, it has been a while since you were on. And a lot's been going on in your world since then. You've been working tirelessly alongside me with publishing more titles at Halftone Productions. And like I said at the start, you were one of the first guests we had on here on the podcast when we were really getting into the whole indie creators, when you guys were starting to look at doing your own comic. And a lot's happened since then. You've gone through with another artist and you've rebooted the series, which is not an easy trope, as we all have come to realise. But upwards and onwards with that, you've been able to prove that you're quite resilient when it comes to reformatting and reshaping the world in the comics.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, and just, it can be daunting sometimes for those who are new to it, but also it is part of the joy that we get from creating them is kind of the feedback we hear and tabling beside you at conventions. I've been fortunate enough to hear you talk to people and people talk to you about your work and how much they've enjoyed it, and how they enjoy what's coming up next for you. But we'll wind the clock back a little bit. We'll talk about your beginnings in this all because, like I said at the start, it hasn't been easy. And just to give the people who are listening, possibly for the first time, a bit of an idea about you and what it's all about for Super RBA.
Yeah, so Super RBA started off as a inspiration while I was in a garage watching anime, and always kind of been interested in writing stories and just that whole escapism side of things in the creativity sphere. Could never really draw worth much of a damn. And was always kind of told by a couple of English teachers that my writing wasn't too crash hot. So out of spite, I decided to start crafting a world, and heavily inspired and based around the formats of manga and anime. And that eventually took shape into the form of Super Ready Battle Armor, which was a lot of myself poured into it as well. Going through like heart condition as a kid and growing up with that, and still currently having that. The main character can actually bring people back from the dead. So death is something that's always been at the forefront of my life from a very early stage, and kind of just picked that up, channeled that fear and mystery into the story of bringing people back from the dead and having them come back changed, and have it as a bit more of like a transformative literary tool, as opposed to, I mean, actually, no, death is kind of transformative. A different kind of transformative tool than is normally used in the sphere of killing off a character. So it's kind of more like the catalyst of someone becoming their true self.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great analogy of the series. Apart from being, you know, a kick-ass manga that it is,
Thanks, man.
and I think the process, because I've been involved in it since the early days when you first came up with the idea, and, you know, thought of doing it into a web series, and it evolved into a comic book series. It hasn't been easy, and I think that, you know, a lot of creators probably would have just let it fall by the wayside, either turn to another project or just walked away from it completely. And I remember talking to you back in the early days of when you were looking at rebooting it, and even that was, you know, it was going to be a troubling time getting that organized, and
it was very daunting.
It was, and I understand that completely. Not, you know, you're experienced on the writing side of it, but the illustration side of it was something that you hadn't touched upon before, and, you know, it was just a matter of kind of putting the feelers out and trying to find someone that would suit your writing style. And fortunate enough, you found Lewis, and he's been a commodity ever since the start of that working relationship. And now we're coming into the 5th issue very soon, and I think that it's exciting to see it now transcend the story that was told prior to rebooting it. Which is exciting. And I think for readers who are familiar with both the original version and the rebooted version, I think that is going to be exciting for them, because probably, you know, it's taken a lot longer. You know, in creating independent comics is it's a struggle. It's not for the faint of heart. You are working outside of your own social life and working life to make these things happen. A lot of it's basically because of enjoyment. There's not much else that goes to it.
Passion of love.
Exactly. And to see you kind of come from that and crawl back to the point where you were last year for issue 4, now coming into issue 5, that to me is such an achievement. I mean, there's not a lot of people that do that and have been able to kind of bounce back like they have. So that is a credit to your work ethic and your ethos in creating comic books.
Spent too much time already investing into it. It's the lost cost fallacy. Got to keep going, otherwise it's a waste of time, man.
I think that's for every creator when they start it. There is a lost fallacy with that. And, you know, we've experienced that at conventions when they haven't been as successful as what they were, you know, the last time or the last one that we've done. And then sometimes we have great success with the ones we do. So I knew you were going to laugh as soon as I said that.
I'm such a child.
For those playing at home, every time I say do, Brad seems to laugh. So he is quite immature, actually. Kind of, when you think about it, yeah, I'm a bit immature like that too. But moving on. So I guess, you know, you've had the experience to be able to write other stories for some people as well within the comics community, which is great. I know personally you do a lot of editing for the comics in Halftone Productions.
Yep.
Like my stuff, and more recently we've got Logan who's jumped on board the Halftone family with his project Amphibian Noir.
Ready to sink my teeth into that with
Um,
him.
yes, and I think that is actually strengthening your ability as a writer too, kind of editing as well. So that is something I've really kind of seen you flourish at over the past few years since we've really started doing a lot more projects. What excites me about what you're doing now is you're started to put your foot into the water for lettering.
Yes.
Give us a bit of insight into that.
I mean, primarily it was wanting to take a bit of load off your shoulders because you have a lot going on between podcast and doing, what is it now, 3 different comic book series?
4.
4. And so yeah, it was interesting because I drink with my eyeballs a lot of manga. So I started shifting gears from just reading the stories to deconstructing it. Looking at the bubble flow and how everything's spaced out, and the thing that is very inconsistent with manga is the is it the kerning around the negative space around the letters in the
Typesetting.
bubbles?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out my own sort of style there and what's going on that. But it was a very interesting learning curve because pretty much all of what I do has been self-taught.
Yeah.
With annoying you to kind of check my work and whatnot. But yeah, jumping headfirst into the Illustrator and like the Adobe products, that was a bit of a nightmare because I initially learned through Clip Studio Pro, which is same but different. Like functionality wise, you can do most of what you can do in the other programs, but like the shortcuts and whatnot, drastically different. And so that was an interesting learning curve for me in the most recent years. But I think the very first comic that I started lettering was probably either issue 2 or 3 of Super Ready Battle Armor when I was still working with my previous artist. Again, wanting to take a bit of the workload off their shoulders and having a bit more control over the dialogue aspects, which is probably the biggest part of what I enjoy doing from a writing standpoint. Just the nuances in the way a certain character will talk, what specific words they will use, whether or not to abbreviate the word, to try and give that character, their own individual voice while you're reading it. So, for example, abbreviating captain down to captain, things like that, just to kind of give a little bit more of a personality to the dialogue. Actually, sound effects. That's the big one that I'm leveling up on at the moment. I would say, and that's been a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we worked on a project recently as well, and noticing that you've kind of started to really take on the nuances with lettering. And I mean, typesetting for me, it's what I do for my 9 to 5 job, and I did enjoy doing it back in the beginning, early days. But now with a lot more producing at this stage and also writing and illustrating, I kind of feel like it's become more of I wouldn't say a pain in the butt, but it's a necessary evil that I don't really want to take care of.
A little bit more of a chore.
And if I'm not enjoying it, I should definitely not be doing that part. And it's probably the one thing I'm happy to relinquish to outsource to other letterers and to you as someone who's an up and comer. You know, watching you now grow from when you started doing lettering for me or even your own books and seeing that kind of progress now, I can really see that you've started to see those little things and kind of those niches and starting to pick up on it and play them to your advantage. And lettering is an important factor into any comic books. You've got to make sure that your lettering is strong because it's only as strong as what the artwork is, and it will carry the story as well. So you got to make sure that it is on point. We both follow Nate Picos, who is Blambot, and he's very critique about his lettering in comic books, and he's done a lot of work for comic book publishers over the years that he's been doing it, and he even watching him pick up on big publishers and their lettering and how they fault their own work when they're doing something. Yeah. It is important. It's kind of made me appreciate the art of lettering a lot more, and watching you do it now, it does really shine that it is just as important as your artwork to convey the story across.
Yeah, especially if it's like very dialogue heavy as well.
Yeah.
If you've got a series that's very big on like exposition and dialogue, even if it's just more of a silent thing with your biffs and your bows and your boom bams, they can definitely elevate a piece of artwork to the next level.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. It's elevating the artwork. It's interesting, and I think like where you've been progressing with the lettering as well, that's exciting. I think that's a whole other world for you as well. You've been writing now for 7 years, and to actually start a different area and kind of take that on board and run with it like you have, to me, that's exciting. And then there's a lot of letterers out there, and I've been fortunate enough to work with a couple of them, and I know that I don't want to have to. Straight up, I'm going to say I don't want a letter. There's no way I want a letter. I think I did one of the projects we did work on. I just got it all set up to how the font that I wanted and how it was set up with the boxes, and even that to me was it was daunting, and it was a pain in the butt to be able to sit there and have to letter. So I've got no ambition to want to letter in the future. So I'm happy for you to take that on. I'll handball that to you now, Brad. And that's on you.
Cool. Happy to do
it. So for you, what's next for Brad and Super RBA, or even any other projects in the works? Is there something you would like to talk about in that sense?
I mean, nothing concrete in terms of other projects. Like there are stories that I'm working on and toying with. Nothing's kind of gotten to the point of a solid script yet. But just like flashes of inspiration, and then jotting down notes and continuing on with work on SRBA and doing lettering for you on random projects here and there. At the moment, just coming off the end of tweaking up issue 5 script. Much happier with how it's turned out now after the first draft. I felt uncomfortable is probably the word that I would use. Like I was happy with it, but it just something felt off, and had to go back to the drawing board and analyze what was going on, and just kind of seeing where certain parts of the story needed a bit more breathing room or to be condensed. In like the first initial plan, I gave the final scene probably too many pages, which could have been used better at, say, the start of the issue, giving some, I think, pretty good camouflaged exposition, and introducing a new character to the series as a whole, actually. At this point, up until issue 4, most of the characters and settings have been recycled, I guess would be an apt word for. And like playing with Play-Doh, like you get your little sculpture and then you reform it into something else. This was kind of like getting a new piece of Play-Doh. Why am I going with Play-Doh? Lego Works. A new Lego set and combining that with the initial project. So that was actually really fun. It's been a while since I've created a new character for that series. But I'm dabbling my toe into another project, which will be kind of like a supernatural mystery thriller, I guess. It kind of, if I had to genre it at the moment, that's the avenue that I'm kind of leaning more down towards. With that, it's going to be delving into a bit of the like eldritch horror, but that's kind of more of the vehicle more so than anything. It's going to be its own thing, even though it's kind of loosely based in like the H.P. Lovecraft universe of like Cthulhu and whatnot.
Yep. There you go. Well, you've got a few things in the work by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got Super RBA issue 5 coming out this May. April or May, on top of my head, which is exciting. We're in works with that at the moment, getting that all together.
It's probably, I'd say, in like pre-production at the moment.
Yeah,
just about to go to the artist.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for this one, man.
It's good.
This is something that I've kind of been sitting on narratively wise for 4 or 5 years now. So I'm super excited to finally get that out and just me physically get it out of my head and onto paper. That's probably the most exciting part of doing the comics for me. And then once it's finally compiled and I sit through looking at the pages for hours on end while doing the lettering, I can still sit back and have a look at the finished product and read through it. And enjoy myself.
Yeah, that's the important thing. Well, very exciting, Brad. I've got a peek inside it all happening, so I know what's going on. So I can't wait. I know that, and I'm sure the readers who have backed the Kickstarter campaigns in the past and who have bought the comics from conventions or on our web store have definitely enjoyed the read, and I look forward to the next one. Before we do wrap up this segment of the podcast, I do want to ask one last question, and I'll be asking it throughout the episode tonight. Any tips or tricks that you've got for anyone who's looking to get into the indie comics game that would like to take part?
Just start. That's probably the hardest stage, is getting past that mental barrier. Just start writing, start drawing, and don't stop. Look at writing side of it. I watch a lot of analysis of people's works on YouTube, doing like of series that I like and enjoy. So it's both educational, but it's also in entertainment. It's edutainment. But in terms of like building up your skills, I would read books. If that doesn't work for you, Skillshare's really, like, things like that platform are really good to just kind of get the insight on people that have structured up a lesson plan almost to expand upon your pre-existing skills that you've been starting and not finishing. And yeah, just learn. Always be open to learning. It's different from like when you're at school, because if it's something that you're passionate about, there's that drive behind you. So those are Brad's 2 tips: start and don't stop, and learn. Just keep learning.
there you have it, guys. That is Brad's tips for getting into the comic book world. Definitely hit Brad up on social media. He is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. He has a podcast every second
Yes.
week, Read This Way with Logan French, which is exciting. You can check them out on our YouTube page, which this is actually on, so you'll be watching it already. So subscribe. And definitely check out Brad and Logan's podcast every Wednesday night. Brad, again, thank you for joining in. Thank you for being a part of this podcast over the last 8
Not at all,
years.
man.
It's been an absolute joy to get to know you and to work alongside you as well, which is a bit of an extra bonus. But that's all we have time for now with you, Brad. So again, thank you for coming on. And guys, go and check out Super Ready Battle Armor, Read This Way, and go and hit up Brad on social media. So thank you again, Brad.
Thanks for having me, man.
G'day, guys. It is Sean Keenan here from Comics to Movies. I am just wanting to give a huge shout out to Kieran Jack and the Halftone Effect. Congratulations on your 100th episode. I'm super excited to have been on your podcast the most out of any guest, and I cannot be more proud of what you have achieved over the last 7 years of the podcast, and congratulations again on your 100th episode, and I hope there is another 100 more. Have a great day and good luck.
Hi gang, we're back again with our next segment featuring Angie Spice. Angie, thank you for joining in to the 100th episode of The Halftone Effect.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran, and congrats on 100 episodes.
Oh, cheers, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but we finally made it. You have been a guest on the show before, so it's great to have you back to talk shop about your work and what you've been up to over the last, well, I think it's only been 2 years since you're on the show, which, you know, it's great to have you back on and talk about your work. So I guess the big question is what you've been up to since we last talked.
It feels like 5 years, but so it's hard to. I mean, these past few years have been so crazy, just with the state of the world and that. It's kind of difficult to remember exactly. So I finished Korea last year, I think, early last year, and I guess like my main focus has been preparing for the next thing, and also just going back to my studies and learning how to actually draw properly. The right way, which has been really great because it's been something that I kind of never really given myself a chance to embrace. So I've been focused on that, but currently my main focus is my webtoon that's currently running called A Hobart Rhapsody. So that's my main focus at the moment, apart from a few other smaller projects, a few commissions, and a few little markets. Yeah.
I mean, you've been busy regardless of the situation we've been living in, and I've really enjoyed the process that you've been sharing on social media of going back and learning. How was that process in kind of reteaching yourself? Because you're very gifted and you've gone back and done, the anatomy of the body and really developed that, and it definitely shows that you've progressed in the last few years. How do you find all that?
It's been eye-opening, like not just anatomy, but things like gesture, which you're really amazing at, by the way. Things that I learned, like I think I found them, they came quite naturally to me when I was starting out, but then I sort of neglected them and forgot about them. Things like that, just tying in all the different elements of drawing. Because I was very sort of focused on anatomy and structural things, but now it's kind of like, oh, you got to learn it all. And I've got a group that I hang out with that is sort of focused on that on Discord, which has helped a lot. Surrounding myself with people that are, I guess, more advanced than I am really helps.
Yeah, I mean, I take my hat off to you, Angie. The ability to go, okay, I'm going to go back and learn again after the progression you've already achieved with Courier, and the outstanding work that there was in that. That, it's always, I find it, as a character, we have to grow and we have to kind of sometimes go backwards to go forward. And I think that anyone that can do that.
Yeah, I think because just creating and drawing and it was coming very stagnant for me, and it's because I wasn't I don't know, learning, and I think it's important to keep learning, and and also I never felt satisfied not really knowing what I was doing either, because I didn't really think about technique at all, and now suddenly it's slowly coming together. It feels good.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely come together too. But I think that's the joy of kind of independent comics is we don't really have our heading as such. We kind of just go, oh, let's just throw it in and do it, and we develop that way. And then it's quite a common process. We'll go back and we'll reset and we'll kind of look at what we've done and where we're going.
I like it that way because I always thought it would be good to work for a publisher, and I'm sure it is. But at the same time, we can kind of be so creative with our own process, being independent. And I like that. I kind of like refining myself on my own accord a little bit. And because I think the moment you get a publisher, you kind of become a little bit pigeonholed. Like, I mean, I don't know that, but there is an element of that. I think I've really learned the value of being self-published these past few years as well. And a lot of different levels.
Yeah, and I mean it's evident in the work that you did on Courier and leading into the next project that you've been working on. How was it wrapping up Courier after so long working on that, and then knowing that the conclusion was there, and this will be the last, well, possibly the last time you'll ever draw these characters?
It was a little bit. I think the time that I finished it was during a really bad lockdown in Melbourne. So it was actually very anticlimactic for me because I hadn't really adapted to everyone does Kickstarter now, but I didn't want to adapt to that for Korea because I hadn't done that from the start. So I kind of was I always counted on the physical events to really get my product across. And now that was gone, I just I couldn't get it across the way I would have liked. But in hindsight, I don't know. I feel like it still hasn't got some sort of finality about it, but maybe when I do a graphic novel, a collected edition, I might feel a bit more finalized, but
well, I mean, it'd be great to actually see it have a little launch, I guess, or what would you call it, a second launch for when we get out of the storm that has been this pandemic. Fingers crossed that it's happening. But it definitely is that conundrum of whether you do launch it halfway through on whether a crowdfunding platform. But I think the following that you would have had, people would have been interested in the conclusion of that. And it always is a bittersweet moment when you wrap up a series. It's that point of, I'm happy to stop drawing these characters, but it's like I'm kind of sad to see them go. Did you have that kind of situation?
No, because actually my webtoon's almost like a reinvented continuation of the story.
Okay. Okay.
So, but I was happy to get to wrap up that end of the era, if you like.
Yeah.
Because then I took a year developing a different style, a different take. I was thinking of going digital, but I didn't, which I'm grateful for. Because I read this manga book, I can't think of his name, manga theory book, and he's like, there's such magic in traditional. So I decided to stay traditional, but I still color my current webtoon digitally. So yeah, I kind of reinvented the story, something entirely different, but it's the same characters.
Yep. And the transition from, I guess, the printed format to webtoons, how have you found that process?
I don't know. It's still early days. I think at the moment I've got about 20 episodes up there, and I think 18 of them are public. So that's like 20 weeks worth. I don't know. I really enjoy the weekly turnaround of work a lot. I've always wanted that weekly thing because I hate feeling like I have to work on some like a segment of a release for months or
Yeah.
a few weeks.
Yeah.
I hate that, but I love the weekly thing. So I don't know. It's kind of early to see whether it's going to be more beneficial in the long run because you're putting work out there that people aren't necessarily paying for unless they're getting the early episodes.
Yeah.
So like I have my Patreon set up so that people can go check out the earlier episodes if they're on my thing. But
Okay.
yeah, so like unless you get thousands of subscribers, you're not going to really. It's kind of difficult to become an earner on Webtoon. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like I'm giving myself a year to see if things take off or not.
I guess that's half the joy of being an indie creator. You have to kind of test the waters of different ways of putting stuff out there, like Webtoon. What was the other one that was in early 2016? There was another one. What was that? Sorry. Yeah, that was another one. There was, I mean, even Comixology back in the early days before Amazon bought it and it became a behemoth that it is. I mean, there was a tool there to be able to publish work more regularly for independent creators. And Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Patreon. I mean, Patreon has been taken on so quickly by the comics community, which has been great to see. And I didn't realize that your latest one was on Patreon, but that's definitely worthwhile to have a look at that through there, and at least giving something back to you in the long run, rather than just publishing it freely, which is nothing wrong with that. I think that's still a great way of getting out to a large audience. So the form. Yeah. Well, the format that you've got going now, it's more of a manga style, isn't it? How they kind of publish work weekly.
Yeah, that's kind of like a traditional like life of a mangaka, which is what I aspire to be.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, I like that that idea of the lifestyle. Maybe not. You know, I mean, I have my own sort of schedule, my own like. I don't probably do 10 pages a week. It's different because I'm coloring the work.
You're doing it all yourself, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and that too. So I only have a limit of. I don't really do more than 3 pages a week, maybe 4 if I'm really ahead. But yeah, like just 3 pages a week. When you color it, edit it, put it all together in a line format, it does take out.
Yeah, that is incredible, Angie. That is incredible. That, I mean, 3 pages like that. There's a lot of work involved in that, and especially when you're independent and you're doing it all yourself. All those processes we've talked about on the show before, but I mean, when you do it all yourself, there's so much extra, I guess, not such stress, but the pressure of, you know, juggling all those different elements and making them all work in a well-oiled machine. It's very...
There's some aspects that are, for example, if I was making like the format of a webtoon is very easy to format compared to say a comic book page, because you don't have this, you've got so much space because a line could last forever.
Yep.
So you'd have to fit in all these panels. So I found it like a lot easier in a way. Like it takes a while to get used to, but I think it's easier than making a comic book page look good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of see that, because like more recently coming out of the apparition and being such a heavy handed story that it was, walking out of that was kind of a relief, and I don't think I'd ever do that to myself again, because it's basically 12 months of non-stop pushing out pages, which could have been its detriment when I look back at the work in a couple of years. So the process you're talking about right now,
experience to have though, like I think it's good to sort of have a, you know, like something really like grueling, you know, because then you know you can do it if you need to, and you know how to manage it.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't break you, that's the only issue of it. As long as it doesn't break you in the end of it all, you're not broken by it and want to walk away from comic books. Whatever works. But yeah, it's interesting. Like over the last 4 years of talking to individuals, especially as I've become more familiar with the process, it's great to hear that everyone has their own process. And tonight, hearing yours, Angie, it kind of, you're setting yourself goals and you're kind of ticking them off as you go. I think that is probably the hardest skill set within comic books, is to be able to do that and reach deadlines like you're doing. We're not bound by publishers. We're not bound by contracts. We're just doing our own thing. And the issue with that can be sometimes that we don't give ourselves time to do all of the work that we are doing, and we fall behind schedules and release dates and all that kind of stuff when there's something that's maybe waiting on. People might be waiting on it. So to hear you talk about that tonight, that's really a strong skill set to have. And I think that's really important when you come into this industry. If you're going to develop and become a stronger creator or illustrator, writer, whatever it may be, you kind of need to be bounded by those guidelines, because if you don't do that, you are going to let people down in the long run when you're freelancing, and it can become very sticky. I know from experience. So I take my hat off to you to be able to do that and have that discipline.
To work on a product, the harder it is to finish.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's so annoying. It just stays in your head. It's like being a project for a year or so. It's like, oh my God, why is this tab open still? And it just drives you insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
So your format, because I know a lot of your stuff originally was traditional. Have you moved across more so digitally now as you progressed?
Not really. I mean, I do have a smaller project right now that I have drawn up digitally, like fully digitally. But my webtoon stuff is drawn traditionally, still with nibs and ink. Yeah, so that's. I guess it's probably better. It's definitely easier to create webtoons when you're working digitally.
Yeah.
But for me, it's actually quicker working traditionally because I feel a lot more comfortable working traditionally.
Yes, of course.
And I think my work's a little bit better, just because I have a bit more grasp on the page and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I have a Cintiq, and it's a little bit slippery, so my style changes when I use it.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I understand that completely. No, that's awesome to hear, because I'm very much of the same mindset. I would much rather work traditionally. The pens that I use are probably a little different to what you're using by the sounds of it. But it's good to hear that people are still doing it traditionally. There's something about it. There's
something about it. It's definitely got more energy, more power. The shape language is entirely different to digital work, unless you're really, really good at digital work. I just think that there's more energy, there's more life in traditional work.
Absolutely.
I definitely
wholeheartedly agree with you. I have made the transition to the iPad more recently, and it's completely different to using a Wacom, and again to doing it traditionally. So, I mean, every style, every format is obviously a game changer for how you approach it. But I know wholeheartedly I would never swap out going traditionally, and then just convert.
It's hard because there's so many benefits. Like, because I was originally going to do my webtoon digitally, and I was going to use 3D assets, because that's a big thing now.
Yes.
And, I was learning to use some software, and I was getting some models already. But I just thought, if I'm going to do traditional, I might as well just do a worse drawing of something that is like a background or a desk, rather than having the asset. It's
Yeah, it is a conundrum to have, because I know as the technology continues to grow, that more people are relying on it. I find myself personally, I would much rather rely on my own bad illustrations in the background.
Same. Like nothing
because
has to be perfect anyway. So.
exactly in the background, no one's paying too much attention to what's going on when you've got your characters or the action scene in front and foremost. So it's kind of I guess it's the catch-22 of going digital over traditional artwork, and it's still commonly used within the main industry. I'm sure that there's still a lot of people that have got that down pat and they would rather not change, which is awesome. I think it's still great to see that alive and well within the community. I mean, you've just non-stop for you, Angie. You've been working tirelessly even through a pandemic, which is great to see. Working through your latest project, concluding Courier, and hopefully that will get a little release at a convention or something sooner enough once we get back into that kind of stuff. I know that you're doing a lot of smaller markets and stalls of late. How are you finding that compared to the mammoths that were conventions?
Well, I don't know. It's interesting because, like, obviously, like tables and stuff, the cost is way down. You'll make maybe a few less sales, but you probably end up getting like maybe not as much profit, but at least you're getting a profit. I like doing it just to talk to people and meet people and earn a little bit of extra because I got a list of my courier books that I had prepared before the pandemic hit. So it's good to just see people happy to hold them and that. So it's been good. I feel like I'm making up for lost time and it's just there's nothing better than being around other people after the last few years.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. It's definitely it's nice to be able to do them again. The smaller markets and I guess regional shows that are started to pop up. And it is nice to be able to do it at a lesser, I guess, costly experience than what the big conventions are. But it's nice to be able to do small shows that won't leave you out of pocket in the short term, and you're able to make a little bit back and to meet people. I think that's the best part of it, and it's always been the best part of is to talk about your project to people. So that's really cool to see that happening, Angie. It's really cool to see you out and about amongst the people and pushing your awesome art that is out into the community. So it's really cool to see. Before we do wrap up this segment tonight, I wanted to ask a little question about your tips and tidbits to give to someone who might be thinking of jumping into it or is a beginner in the industry of indie comics.
Pretty much, if you're gonna be an independent creator, go with what your heart tells you. Like someone like me can be like, oh, like I'm learning all these new techniques, blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, you don't need to be able to draw perfect to make the better comics. It's about being yourself. It's about the story. It's about your expressions. So you can kind of choose what you want to focus on visually and storytelling wise, but at the end of the day, there's no wrong or right way of doing anything. Unless you want to work for a specific kind of publisher or something, or for a particular audience, maybe there's a few different things you should probably focus on for that industry. But if it's just you, then just do what you want to do.
I couldn't put it any better myself. That's some great advice there, Angie. Thank you very much for that. There you go, guys. You can take that advice on and use it to help push forward your career. Now, Angie, before we do go, I just wanted to ask also, where can everyone find you on the World Wide Web?
So my website at the moment, I say at the moment because I hate my website.
Everyone does.
Net. Yeah. Anyway. But I guess like the best place you could go is my Patreon account, which is because that's always going to stay there. So I think that's patreon.com. It's like Patreon with an E. Don't ask me how to spell it, but it's patreon.com/AngieSpice. I don't really like posting on Facebook at the moment, which is just a personal thing, I guess. But you can follow me on Instagram, where I post weekly at Angie Spice. Art, and also my webtoon is called A Hobart Rhapsody, and that's free to read. So if you just type in A Hobart Rhapsody, it'll come up hopefully.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're the main ones.
There you go, guys. Go and check it out. Angie's work is incredible. She is rocking it at the moment with her latest series and her new style that she's been working on. It is incredible to see her progression throughout the years that I've known you. And again, it's been awesome to have you back on the show, Angie. Thank you once again. No, it's been really cool. Thanks, guys, for checking in. We'll be back in a second with our next guest.
Publisher of Killaroo. Just wanted to shout out Kieran for 100 episodes. Keep up the great work, mate. Cheers.
Halftone Effect. 100 episodes. Good golly. This is Spedsy, aka Rob Lyle, the dude who does The Devil's Toilet. I am just chiming in here to say a huge congratulations to Kieran and everybody at Halftone Productions for this monster effort. Not only putting out quality books, but putting out 100 fruit bagging episodes. Holy moly. A real cool, what do you call it? Those things that they put in the ground. They dig a hole, and then they put it in there, and then they pull it out years later. What is it? I can't remember. Oh man, what is it? Oh well, it's one of those. It's a something. It's gonna drive me nuts. All right, well, it's like one of those. People can go back and check out episodes of this podcast for a long time to come and find out what was going on in the Oz comic scene way back when. Time capsule. Yes, nailed it. All right, so much love to Kieran. And to everybody on his team, and here's to 100 more, even though you're wrapping it up with one final season, but you never know. Get back to work. I want to do another episode. I got books to talk about. All right, sweet. Peace out.
Welcome back, gang. For our next guest, he is not familiar. Oh, sorry, I'm going to start that again. Welcome back, gang. We have now next guest coming up. He has been on the show many times before. Give it up for the one, the only, Ruben Romero. Ruben, thank you once again for coming on.
What up? What's going on?
It's just a 100th episode for the podcast. It's been a huge time coming. I guess I've been working on these now for the last 7 to 8 years, and you've been on the show quite a few times now, and it's always an honor to have you on to talk shop. But you have been a very busy man over the last couple of years with creating comics and whatnot, and I noticed more recently you've been doing a lot of work outside of that. For anyone who is not familiar with the work, do you want to just give everyone a run through of what you've done and what you've been doing over the last few years?
Yeah, let's take a deep breath here. So I started writing comics in 2014, probably at right when The Walking Dead was making a huge a lot of noise in terms of comic book sales, and comic books were kind of making a resurgence, and I always loved comics. It was just something that's always been part of my life. But yeah, fast forward to 2014, I'm reading The Walking Dead, and I'm like, you know what, I gotta write a comic book.
So Ruben, you've been working on a lot of different projects throughout the last few years. More recently, you've hit the ground running with a lot of other projects with other creators, which is really exciting. Do you want to just take us through a few of those projects for people who aren't familiar with your work?
Yeah, so I started writing comics, and my original project is I started writing comics in 2014. I started with a book called The Agency, which is kind of like Harry Potter meets Mission Impossible, minus the wands. So, it just deals with mages, espionage, a young kid who gets kind of wrapped up in all of it. And I'm currently still doing that. It's going to have 2 volumes. I just signed it to Source Point Press, which is a lot of fun. They're a great small indie publisher that's mainly focuses on horror stuff, but they're trying to expand. And I think they've got a lot of a lot of love for the agency, and they've been a great support system for me to get that wrapped up. So we're gonna see that kind of wrapping up in the next few issues here. We're gonna do 2 volumes. The first 5 issues are already out. Issue 6 is done. Issue 7 is about to be done. 8, 9, and 10 have been written. So, Riley Dean and that story of the agency is going to be done. And then I started working on a book called The Illusion Witch, which is going to hit stores this year, 2022, with Behemoth Comics, who have done a ton of great stuff, got a lot of great IP in terms of video games. So they've been great too, as well. So I've been blessed with that. And I got a book with a great friend of mine named Casey Bowker. He's my co-writer, not only for this book, but for movie screenplays and things like that we ventured off into, called In Fairy, which is kind of like our love letter to Buffy and Men in Black and The Sopranos. And I know it's like a weird mix to hear that, but yeah, it's got like monsters and organized crime element, and it's a fun book. That's also with Source Point Press, so that'll be hitting stores this year as well. And most recently, back in November, I mentioned the screenplay writing. Me and Casey got signed to the Tobias Literary Agency as screenplay writers. So, trying to do that as well. So yeah, man, just trying to stay busy, creating content, and just living the creator life.
Well, yeah, I mean, from where you started, where we first met through this podcast, through mutual friends, and now we've continued to grow as a friendship through that, and watching you develop has been it's been incredible. And now hearing you tonight talk about this and the likes of being picked up by Source Point Press and Behemoth,
or excuse me, not Source Point, but Second Sight.
Oh, Second Sight.
Second Sight Studios. Yeah. We might have to cut that out. Yeah, no, Second Sight Studios. Excuse me. Got my kid running around here. I got SSP, SSS. All kinds of things going on in this head right here. But yeah, no, Second Sight Studios, man. They're out of Florida. Marcus Roberts, Bradley Golden. Those guys. They just, it's a small indie publisher ran by people of color, minorities, which that was a welcome kind of feeling, because being Hispanic, being Cuban, Venezuelan, having to kind of look for other places to find my inspiration in terms of people who look like me and who come from my background, and then solely being inspired by just people who are not from my background, right? So to have people who have been able to come together, establish a brand, create something that is, totally unique. Like I said, Second Sight mainly focuses on horror. But for them to expand, they've got, this whole Roku deal with brand, with original content creation. They're doing a bunch of stuff. So to see indie guys really hitting the ground running and trying to do things for me, the creator, that'll expand my brand and make me probably, come outside of that comic book world and maybe get a TV show or something like that. That's pretty awesome, So yeah, shout out, my bad, brain fog. But yeah, Second Sight is the label that's going to have the agency, and In Fairy, Behemoth will have the Illusion Witch. And I've got a couple other things that are cooking, man. I've got some work for hire projects that are a lot of fun that I'm not at liberty to discuss right now. We got a project, me and you, that we should be working on.
One day.
One day. That's gonna play with all kinds of things and all kinds of different genres and things. But yeah, Mike Teener, he's, I'm dying to do something with him. So I think right now I'm just, I'm probably the same guy that we were when we first met, right? Like, just
Absolutely.
Still as excited, still as passionate. But now I'm just like, I think even more focused, if that's possible.
Yeah.
So just as you are,
But I mean, that's evident in your work. Your latest release that you were on Kickstarter, the 2 issues that I have now, it's really present in your work. You've progressed so much as a writer and as a storyteller as well. Like, the thought process that you bring into your stories now, it's not that they weren't there in the beginning. It's just that you've, as every writer does, they've evolved and they've become stronger in what their skill set is, and that is really evident. And listening to a lot of people talk about your latest release is that people all say the same thing, that you've really developed as a storyteller, and I think that's more proof in the pudding for the publishers, independent publishers, looking at your work and going, okay, let's bring them on, let's look after them, let's start releasing them. And you still able to have that chance to put it onto a Kickstarter, which I always say is the actual platform for pre-orders that would far reach what you could yourself if you were a separate website. So
100%.
You've been able to build that audience, keep them going, and then hopefully now that transfers into sales and new readers with the distributing rights that they've got for your work, and a wider audience. You don't know what it's going to bring at the end of the day.
I don't, I was just, it's funny. And first of all, thank you. I appreciate it that you're able to see that growth and that development.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, when I started, I think I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to give you popcorn. And I didn't, I think I approached it even in the casting or the character creation, so to speak, of the agency. I've got like, the beautiful female leader, the white young teenage kid, the British guy, the black guy, you know what I'm saying? And it was very like 80s, 90s comic book. Why? Because like that's what I thought of comic books, right? And I hadn't read comic books for a long time. And I should have taken a key from even what inspired me, which was The Walking Dead, was, Kirkman had a way to make you feel things inside a zombie story. The way that George A. Romero did when he challenges you when you watch The Night of the Living Dead now, right? When you watch the original movie, you see that that's not a zombie movie. That is a platform, a speaking, a microphone, megaphone about culture, right? About what was going on in that time. So for me, I missed the forest for the trees in my excitement. And then I went back and I realized as I started to write that you can tell deeper stories in comics. And I started to consume more indie comics than more so than mainstream. And I realized that, man, there's a lot of great stories here that aren't suits and capes and, magic and zoom and thoom and, rackadoom and, things like that. So it was like, okay, so that was the challenge, right? It was bringing it down into those little boxes and really laser focusing. So I think that was the task that I set out for myself with the Illusion Witch, because it's a big epic fantasy, but in its DNA and its core, it's a story about trauma. It's a story about facing inner demons and becoming your better self. And again, like that's not what I was thinking about when I first started writing comics. I was thinking more rackadoom, I wanted popcorn,
But I think that's the hidden layers that we've all come across when we are creators and writers, especially, that you start formulating something, and then as you dive deeper into it, you go, okay, there was hidden meaning there. I mean, you look back at a lot of comic creators in the past, and the fans who love their work, it might be a convention, they ask them a question about it, that a hidden layer that they may have not realized they were writing about, and then it turns out that that's actually in there, and it's more prevalent as society moves forward. These kind of problems and situations that characters have dealt with in comic books are more relevant to today's world. So I think that's just good storytelling, man. And as we reflect on our own work, we do go back through it, and we might be able to pinpoint those moments where we're like, oh, we actually were telling something in our subconscious that we didn't realize we were actually telling in the how we're pitching it to people. Right. And I think that's something, it's kind of beautiful. I guess it's beautiful in the sense of saying it is that is something we do and we don't realize. And I love that. I love when we're able to kind of peel away the story and find little bits and pieces that are not at the forefront of the story.
Yeah, I mean, that even with the agency, now that I'm approaching, when I approached 6 through 10, there was a lot of turmoil going on in our, in my country, even in your country. But politically, so I brought that into issue 6, and and I bring this level of, there was already a level of government because the International Agency of Magic deals with the United Nations and the United States government,
Yep.
and pretty much just all over the world. So it plays to these world politics, but I never leaned into it until now, where I start in issue 6 through 10, which a lot, again, I'm doing it purposefully because I hope to come back to this world and tell you other stories in it. But it's vital for you to see how kind of like magic and those kind of acts using magic have kind of forced the world's government's hands to kind of maybe lean on these mages a little harder than they were before. And what does that do to Riley's story, right? And like, what does that do to an orphan kid? And I think the 6 through 10, I jumped, especially in issue is 8 through 10 is really where the spotlight really falls on Riley. I put so much thought into what is this kid feeling? No parents, no, he didn't have a Sirius Black or anybody who came in. Like, yeah, he had he had Remo and these agents, but they haven't had time to bond the way that you would feel that they should. And even though they're close, Riley's still, for the most part, alone. So again, it's just one of those things where I wasn't thinking about that when I first started writing it. But now when I went to go end it, I was like, I need to make people feel something for Riley, for it to be full-fledged. Yeah, it could be popcorn, it could be magic spells and things like that, but it also needs to make you feel. And I think as a whole, I sat down the other day and kind of just read the first 5 and then read issue 6 and then just read the scripts through 7 through 10. And I was like, I felt good. I was like, this is where it all comes together, So it was nice. It was nice.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great way of fleshing out the story. I think it's a great way of like finishing up. I mean, telling a story and then ending it, like they always say, you're going in with your beginning and your end, and the middle basically will come together itself in most cases. What I found also with writing is the ending is always hard to finish up, and it's always I guess it's sadness in a certain aspect because we're wrapping up and we're closing the doors on these characters that we've been nurturing and evolving over the process of how many issues you might write for it. So it's hard. It really is something to come to terms with when you are a writer or a creator.
No, 100%. I just killed one of my favorite characters. Spoiler alert. I'm not gonna say who,
I was gonna say spoilers, man.
I'm not gonna say who it is, but yeah, it was, I found myself, typing that death out, and even though it's well deserved, not well deserved, it's well suited because it's something that just made sense story wise for me. It was one of those things where it's like I struggled with it, like I was really gonna put him down. Oops, I said him. Now you guys know it's a him. But yeah,
I'll say it now.
Yeah. When I put him down, it was just, I was like, damn, wow. Like I really felt it. And it's because I have been with these characters for so long and they've lived in my head for so long. And as you get to the end, you start imagining where they go from here, and some you're like, there is nothing there. This is it for them. This is the story for them. And what does that mean for them? So again, yeah, bro, like I think when you met me and we first met each other, for me it was like the popcorn. It was like how much action can I give you that's gonna blow your mind? And now I'm like, how can I make you cry? Right? Like now I want you to like cry, but be like, man, that was a good cry. You know what I'm saying? Like I needed that cry. So it's like one of those things where it's like we definitely evolve as writers, and it's kind of fun to look back on it, and have touching stones like me and you who have kind of been on that journey together but separate, and be like, man, do you remember? I think it's pretty awesome.
It's funny you say it because it is the truth. I mean, you are saying, or crying. If you can make your audience cry, I'm the opposite. I'm like, can I make my audience go, what the hell just happened? And then that's the end. I mean, the shock value, the emotional value, that as storytellers, I think that's what makes you thrive. Yes, the beginning is all about the popcorn, the entertainment, but I think it's what it leaves you with, and can it leave a lasting effect? So definitely, man, you're on the money there. And evolution with our skill set and what we do is I think it goes hand in hand with how we progress, and I think it's pure enjoyment watching you evolve as a writer. You know, the passion and the joy that you have for it is very evident, and I think anyone who knows you knows how much you love doing what you're doing. You know, you love reading comic books, and you love consuming all the stuff that is evolved around comic books, films, whatever it may be, but you are very passionate about the storytelling process and the end product, and that is really evident in your work, man. So, you know, for the last 8 years we've been able to know each other and you know, build a friendship. That's been really cool to be a part of. Now, before we do wrap up this part of the segment, I wanted to ask you a question about, you know, anyone that's coming into the comic books community that is, you know, maybe new to it, wanting to do some writing, or, you know, whether it's lettering, any part. What's some advice that you would give to them?
Well, first and foremost, you've been singing my praises and giving me my flowers. I want to do the same for you because, you know, a couple of days ago, you know, I received a long-awaited care package from you,
Oh
and
yeah,
you know,
six
I just
months in the
gotta, yeah.
making.
Well, you know, with COVID and everything coming from Australia, I mean, right now to ship from here to Australia was $70. I had to contact some backers and be like, "You're gonna have to give me a second because we're gonna have
Oh
to. We
jeez.
just gotta wait." And thank God, everybody, you know, so far, everybody so far so good. Everybody's been very patient. But yeah, man, I got your package. You know, Purgatory, The Talking Bread, and these are the first time that I've actually been able to read these and hold them in my hand. The apparition, all of these things, the trading cards, your pins, everything is A1, man. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I talk about when it comes to indie comics. People say, "Oh, you can't be snobby and you can't be, cocky." And it's like, it's not about being snobby. It's not about being cocky. It's about, I put something today on Facebook about setting goals, and people set a lot of high goals. And it's like, those high goals are great, but sometimes those high goals are uncontrollable, right? So us as creators, leading into the long way around into the answer into your question, is study your craft. Study your craft and take it seriously. Do not think that you are better than the next person or that you are the next best thing. Believe you me, there are 100,000 Ruben the writers. This thing that separates me and the things that separate Kieran and the things that separate all these other indie creators that we start to see in our circles start to rise up is your love of the game, right?
Yeah.
Is that passion. How much do I love it? How many comic books am I reading? What am I watching? What am I studying? Am I watching TV just to watch it, or am I watching it to break it down? Same thing with comics. Study your craft. And then with everything is you know people tell you do what you love. I say write what you love, right?
Yeah.
Write what you love. Don't go out there and try to change the wheel, or make things there. I'm gonna write an upside down comic book. No, man. Look, listen. Just don't complicate it. Just control that one thing. Create that product that is worth people's attention, that is worth people's time, and worth, like I said, a label's distribution in terms of a publishing house. You know, and there at that point, then you can, from there, those everything else falls in place. It may not fall right away. It's not going to be a domino effect. For some it is, for some it isn't.
Yeah.
But I think, those three, then the third thing is be patient, right? Is what I was going to top off with, is be patient. So study your craft, be a student. Never consider yourself a master. Always be a student. Write what you love, and be patient and be humble. It's good to feel like you're great at it. And when people tell you that, accept it and feel it. But also know that there's another you that's waiting to take your spot, and
Yeah.
you just can't fall back. So you just gotta take it all in, at one step at a time. But really, just, those three things for me have been key, have been instrumental, and I've learned them along the way. I didn't come in with those gems or those keys. It was along the way that I realized, like, if I really want this to happen, then I have to treat it like a real job. I do. I got to work my 9 to 5, and then I got to come and I got to, read 20 issues of a book, comics, and really break down, like, what just happened there. Why did Hickman make that choice? Why did Kirkman? Why did Williamson? Why did Snyder? Why did they do this? Why did they introduce this character this way? And I think people think, like, that it just happens, that you just put it on paper, and it just, and if you follow this 1, 2, 3 of comic books, it's going to happen for you. But it's not, it's not cookie cutter. It can't be, because if it is, then it's never going to fly. So
Wow, that is some word of wisdom, mate. You've really punched it out of the park for anyone who is interested in it. Anyone that's listening to the podcast tonight and is looking at doing it. There is some great advice for you guys to be able to take that up and listen to what Ruben. Go and check him out on his social media networks, which we'll check out before we wrap up tonight. But again, Ruben, thank you for joining into this monumental episode of the Halftone
Huge.
Effect.
Huge, man.
Never
I'm
thought we'd get
so
here,
happy.
but yeah, it's awesome, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and to talk to you and to talk shop with you. Just when we're not doing the podcast, I know we do that quite often, especially now we're working on a project together. But before we do wrap up, can you just tell the audience where they can find you on the social media World Wide Web?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. That's probably my preferred platform. You can follow me there at Ruben the Writer. Instagram, Ruben the Writer. And you can find me on Facebook, Ruben Romero. I've got a writer page, and then I just got a regular friend page. Haven't hit my max limit. So you can actually friend request me. Be part of the 5,000 friend limit, But yeah.
Awesome.
That's where
there you
they
go,
can find
guys. Yep, definitely. Go and check him out, guys. Go and support his work. He is killing it. He is the next big writer of Hollywood and in the comic books community. And you need to be on this train when it goes kaboom. Once again, Ruben, thank you for joining into the Halftone Effect for the 100th episode. And we'll be back in a second with the next guest.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Hey guys, how's it going? Jordan here. If you don't know me, I am a Sydney-based creative individual. I have no labels. I'm an artist and illustrator. But congratulations, Kieran. Congratulations on 100 episodes, man. You can hang your hat on that at the end of the day. I really, really am so proud of you. For getting to your 100th episode, dude. It's a huge milestone. Congratulations, everyone at a Halftone Effect. And here's to another 100 more.
But moving on from that now, we've got a little bit more news to talk about in the sense of working on projects. You approached me, 4 months ago now? Something like that, to talk about an idea that you had, and I was completely taken off guard by it. I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect it to come back. I thought it had been done and had been done and dusted. You had your moment with that, and you'd moved on from it. I was quite shocked.
That's still true. All that is still true. I did have my moment, and I have moved on from it.
Well, we'll see what happens because I might take it over and you'll be like, nah, I don't want it back now. For people who are listening, I'm excited to say that I'll be taking over writing and illustrative duties for the Wrath of the Cursed, which is now, with Matt's blessing, being called The Legend of the Cursed. Which is exciting. Matt, do you want to tell people about this? Because this is completely different to what I'm used to, and I guess I'm taking on nurturing your baby.
It's equally as exciting for me as it is for you, and I'm thrilled because what we've been talking about, all these sort of negative aspects of not having collaboration. That's like the complete opposite of the way we've worked over the years. And that's, I just feel like there've been a few comics that I've worked on and people I've worked with where there's been that flow, this sort of heightened sense of flow, everything's coming together and ideas are bouncing around, and not all of them are great, but the ones which work, they're being brought up to a higher level. So for people who are not familiar, when a few years ago, Kieran and I did a variant issue of The Wrath of the Curse. And, it was issue 3, if I'm correct, issue 3.
Yeah.
And I think that came about because I think about comics a lot. And I think about stories a lot, and I think about what's possible. And like I have these thoughts, like, all right, so I've got a comic coming out. I wonder how much it'll cost to do like a foil cover, or I wonder if there's anyone who can do a hologram, like, or glow in the dark cover. There's always, what I might be wrong, but I think I might have been one of the first people in indie comics in Australia to do a blank cover on a comic with.
Okay.
Now I don't know if that's true. I don't want to take credit if it's not, but I don't think many people were doing that back a while ago.
Yeah.
We'd seen it. I mean, I'd seen it for the first time with Marvel and DC. And the first time I saw it, I thought, "Wow, what a sick idea!" And so, I've done it. But one of the ideas which I had when I was working on Wrath of the Cursed 3 was I've been doing variant covers. That's been a bit of a trademark of my comics. Wouldn't it be cool? And this is crazy. Wouldn't it be crazy and cool and different and unique and original and probably a world first if there was a variant comic which wasn't just the cover, but the entire comic was a variant with the art. So it's the same story, same page count, but the interior art is drawn by a different artist. And I thought there's really only one person who would even entertain the thought of doing this, and that's my main man, Kieran. So I chucked you a message, probably on Facebook or somehow, pitched the idea, and as I said, like there's only one person crazy enough to say yes, and he did.
Yeah. I had enough insanity in me to say yes. Look, it was definitely. I look back and I'm quite shocked that we got it done in the time frame we did, because I was working on In Purgatory at the same time. But I've recently gone back to it whilst working on this project now, and I cringe at it. It's almost like it's an embarrassment, because I just don't feel it did credit to your story at the end of the day. And
look, you're being hard on yourself, because I thought it was brilliant, and I think part of what I liked about it was that I knew that you had a very different style, but I knew that we have a similar storytelling sensibility. Like I know you've got the passion, and I just thought, I wonder how this story would translate into Kieran's style. And I think from memory, like we had a fairly loose, like I didn't have a deadline per se, but I think we might have said, let's try and aim for mid-year, so that way I get mine done, you get yours done.
Yeah.
And I want it to be as comfortable for you as possible, knowing that you had other projects on, and you've got a life outside of comics as well.
Well,
And
yeah.
I knew
Sometimes.
well, yeah, some sort of life.
Just breathe like comics.
I knew that I could get mine done by that certain time, and I hope that you could get yours done. But it was exciting. It was a lot of fun. I was getting pages from you, and I was sending you the pages I'd done, and I said, if you want to use these as layouts, feel free. If you don't, that's fine. And then we did the launch of these comics.
Yes.
And we just sold so many comics.
Yeah, it was something like I'd never experienced before, and I'd done a few launches at Brendan's store. He's always great to have us there and let us sell our comics, and it was something I'd never experienced before. Like, not doing a convention, nothing like that before. Like, just out the front with you, slinging comics, talking to people about what it was, and the general feedback we got from the audience of it being a variant comic and not a variant cover, rather so. It was an awesome experience. Don't by any means think that like I wasn't grateful for it, man. It was a totally incredible experience for me. It was I thought if I'm gonna do it, I need to just go all in and do it, and I think I did go all in and do it. I just wish that, like, reflecting on my art now, it's like, I could have done this better and I could have done this better. thinking like back when I was looking at it, like, oh, I've done that. I'll probably never touch that character again. And then you throw me a curveball and, hey, you want to go back and play with my characters again? I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I can continue the legacy of Matt Kime, but I'll have a crack.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I kind of just dove into it. Well, we're talking prior to the podcast starting, but as soon as you sent me the message, I basically threw myself into it. And I think I'd actually come out of writing mode as well from working on the apparition, so it was kind of timed really well coming out of that project, and I threw myself into it and was just basically sending you messages every hour, going, "What do you think of this idea? How about this idea?" And the response that you were giving me was like, and it goes back to collaborating, and I guess the relationship that we have it kind of streamlined it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And I gave you the pitch. I think after that first weekend, I kind of gave you the pitch of what it was gonna be without giving too many spoilers away, and how many issues it was going to be and the story I was going to tell, and I think that was the fun of it, just kind of bouncing back and forth with you and having you give me feedback, or if I had a question about a character that I wasn't exactly sure about. I went back and read the trade paperback again, which was fun to be able to go back after. I think it was nearly 2 years since I'd read the floppies, and to be able to do that was great in itself, and go back and revisit those characters in that world. How was your feeling about it when I kind of was pitching? I kept flicking messages to you over that whole weekend.
Yeah, no, well, it made me feel that I'd made the right decision. I felt like that property had a bit of life in it still, and like the Wrath of the Cursed is basically like, it's the ashes of the demon, and I always felt that storyline had so many benefits to it. It had the benefit of time, because people will be aware that it was very much in the tradition of the Phantom, and it was. I foolishly said it was a tribute to the Phantom, and that's because it was. I was honest about that, and that's what led to it coming to a close. But taking a character like the Phantom and washing away the things that you don't like about him, like having a really analytical look at a character, and picking the best qualities and stripping away the things you don't like, and all the continuity which has been, bogged on and stuck to that character, slicing it all away and making it like a legacy character, a generational character. Losing the demon was hard.
Yeah.
Recreating it again in the Wrath of the Cursed felt like, it was sort of really liberating. But I don't know why, but I just decided that I would tell that story arc. I planned to do 3 issues, and then that would be it. And this other little germ of an idea just kept growing, and I just gave in and released the 4th issue.
Yeah.
And then decided that's definitely it. Like, I might have even gone a bit too far. Like, perhaps I should have stopped at 3, but this 4th little story it forced its way out into the world.
Yep.
And then it sat for a couple of years. And I tell you what, every time I read through it, I'm proud of it. And I was always proud of our collaboration as well. And so I think what happened from memory is you drew a picture.
Yeah.
First. And it just twigged that the curse is still, it was successful as far as indie comics goes.
Yeah.
And it was popular as far as indie comic goes, And I just didn't have anything left to give, but I wanted to see if you did, because I told my story, and so I just gave you a message and said, "Here's a crazy idea. Get ready for it. How would you feel? Do you think that you can take this character? And if you do, you've got my complete blessing and you've got complete creative control. Like it's like consider it now yours, and
Yeah.
show me what you can do with it. So
Well, for starters, I fell off my chair.
Yeah, but I was thrilled that you were so keen to get my input as well. Like
Yeah.
I didn't expect that, and I didn't like want you to feel that you had to. You know, I wanted you to truly feel free. And I felt like you were showing me a lot of respect by coming back to me and saying, "Well, what about this? What about this? Would this be possible?" And I thought, okay, I'll be your consultant. You know, I'll
Yes.
happily take that. You
Yep.
know, and you could disagree. You know, you get final say. It's not going to be called Matt Kime's Legend of the Curse. It's
Well, I mean, there was even that that conversation we had because, like, I was like, well, this story takes place after the Wrath, and he's, you know, I feel the character has grown, and I think I messaged you, and I'm like, how would you feel if we didn't call it the Wrath of the Cursed? And I think the first idea was just dropping it and calling it the Cursed. And then it was kind of like, well, how would you feel about if it was like the Legacy? Because going back to the comment you said about issue 4. I don't think you overstayed your welcome by any means with issue 4. I think issue 4 was issue 3 was so intense with the amount of action and the amount of story that was going on that you kind of you had your upper and you needed your downer for that. And issue 4 was kind of the conclusion, but it wasn't in your face conclusion. You know, there was the story of them attacking the Satan, the building. Having a blank right now, but there was that you had a bit of action in there, but you also had a story that had a conclusion rather than just all wrapping it up in issue 3 and being a rush. And when I went back and reread it for the first time, I was kind of like, sorry, when I went back for the first time, when I went back and reread it again, I was like, okay, you know, you've got Cole's son involved in it. You know, he's been through the traumatic events of what's happened throughout this story. And the first thing that came to my mind was like, this is a child that's been brought up in a lifestyle that his father's a warrior. He's a Ronin more or less now, and he's out on his own, doing his own thing, taking on the people that did him wrong. And I was like, this child has been, you know, around it. Children are a sponge. They make those choices that their parents might make, or they'll do the exact opposite and rebel. And I was like, well, what if we made a character that is complete opposite and just pushes it all away and leaves it behind him? So for me, it was kind of approaching it with respect, but also I kind of wanted to make it a story about the likes of a legacy and leaving it behind and walking away from. I guess it relates back to family more so, is that you're stepping away from a family that they might care for you and you might care for them, but you need to walk away from it because it's toxic. So it very much plays on that, and I think each story that I've written, it has a theme going on in it, but it all intertwines to what you had written previously. And I guess, you know, it takes place 30 years later, which was a big risk, I thought, coming to you and talking to you about that not taking place straight after, but actually taking a time jump to when the son now is, you know, in his 30s and Cole's now in a later stage of life. It was all for me. It was very different to what it was being, you know, the creative lead, rather than me being really the creative lead. Was like paying respect to what you had already established and getting your feedback. I think going back to our conversation tonight about editorial, that's what I enjoyed about the process, the collaboration we had, and that to me is how it kind of should work. There's that balance there of you and I talking about, or where this character should go, or should this character come back. And
I thought we were in sync, and it wasn't a case of you like pitching ideas and me trying to redirect them back in line with what I wanted. Like I was completely open to anything you were going to say, and I had to be because I'd already passed it to you. Like that was the whole point of this thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be me, saying no, 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 no. I'd listen and think, all right, well, where could that go, and where are you going with this, and I I honestly felt like the things that you were pitching, and particularly when I was reading it as a script, I kept thinking, I feel like I wrote this. And I'm not saying like because you were trying to copy me, but I just felt like there was this familiarity, almost as if like we were sort of in sync. And I'd read it and think this does feel like where I would have taken it. Um, this makes sense. I like this. Of course that would happen. Of course they would have that relationship. Of course they would respond to each other that way. It just makes sense. Like I get this, and I'm so glad that it's going in this direction because I really like where this is going. And I'm actually becoming like I'm invested in where this is going. And I always would be. Because I don't know about you, but like I love my characters. The characters I create, even the baddies. Like I love them. I want to see what's going to happen to them.
And they've got so much depth to who they are and their flaws, especially their flaws. Like again, going back and reading it, I was like, these characters aren't you haven't written them perfect. You've really fleshed out what makes them either bad people or people with ill intent, and that I loved. I've always loved characters with conflict, and I think that's why I do lean into a lot of grounded comic books with not superpowered beings, but more vigilante styled, and people who think they're heroic but they're actually not. And that kind of led into how I did approach it as well, because all these characters have conflict with who they are and what they're doing. And for you to kind of give me that freedom, even though I was kind of still asked, I always wanted to give you that respect because, you'd hand the baton over to me. That kind of made me think, well, let's really push the boundaries with each of these characters. And I think at the top of my head, there's probably 4 or 5 main characters throughout the whole story. And each and every one of those characters, I feel, have all got their own conflict or their own problems that they're dealing with in amongst the story, because even the time period that I chose for it, which is 30 years later from the time period you chose, I really did research on that and what the area of that world was going through, and kind of brought that back into it, so it really played into what these characters would have to deal with, the journey they go through. And even the ending, that to me, and I'm still toying over that, it was a tough choice because it was also paying homage to your Wrath of the Cursed and also your readers as well, because obviously I know the loyalty that you have with your fans who enjoy the work of the Wrath of the Cursed and the Demon prior to that. So I do want to make sure that I'm not just going and I'm shitting on the legacy of Matt Kime.
Because it has major ramifications, like there's this set of characters, but then if you want to look at it like a wider scope, it should end up in the modern age with this legacy. Like there's the pirates and the Satan and all these, and the executioners and the bad things they do. And somewhere in that family's trajectory, there's a change and a shift, and they become these noble, these good guys, white hat good guys.
Yeah,
but we're not there yet.
No,
but you've suggested a change, which is quite significant. But it's still possible. Like it doesn't change things. It's just a very and we won't spoil it.
No, we won't spoil it. No,
there is something which it will polarize people. Like it will divide opinion. When you pitched it to me, I just thought, wow, that's one thing I didn't see coming. That's big. Is that going to work? Yes, it is. Is everyone going to like it? No.
Yeah.
It's certainly going to it's going to surprise people, and you know,
Yeah.
the more I say that, the less it will.
Well, I think it will definitely divide the audience of how it plays out, especially in the final issue. There's a lot that goes on in the final issue, and I think that at the end of the day, I'm happy I wrote it all together because I think that the end result is it speaks for itself. And hearing you say it tonight, it's given me a lot more confidence because I was very torn between the two endings that I wrote, because I wrote two endings, and I think I pitched you two endings that I wanted to go with. And hearing that tonight kind of gives me the confidence in my writing that I have made the right choice. So
One ending was good, and it was safe, and it was
safe.
predictable.
Yep.
And that's not to say it wasn't a good ending as well. You know, like that if you had have gone with that, and if you still decide to go with that, that's a fine ending. But the other one, to me, is far more. Well, I mean, it's not safe. It's a risk. It's out there. It's ballsy, and it's unpredictable, and it's just the one I like the most out of the two.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it's received. I think that's the best part of it. And I always enjoy getting a kick out of people getting a bit of a twist at the end of their story, especially the ones that I write. And I think I found that more recent with the apparition, doing that and kind of throwing everything on its head and kind of throwing people out when they've looked at it. So I think going into this is, again, I've treated it with absolute respect because it's the Matt Kimes Wrath Curse. At the end of the day, man, that is yours, and the legacy that you have put behind that will carry through within the legacy of the curse, pun intended. So I'm excited, and talking to you about it again tonight has even I think it's lit a fire under my ass to get it into gear and start getting those pages illustrated. So, guys, if you're listening, you can go and check it out. There will be a link in underneath for the. We are going to run a Kickstarter for this one because I do like to do everything through Kickstarter. It's just a fun way of being able to create more content for you guys. But you will be able to link onto that and join in the pre-campaign. At this stage, I'm thinking we'll be launching it in October, just so I've got enough time to really get those pages to the best of the approval of the readers, I guess, and carrying on the legacy of Matt Kime and the Cursed. But Matt, thank you once again for joining in tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on for what is the last series of Halftone Effect.
Yeah.
And it's been a blast to have you on the couple of episodes we've had you on for. And guys, keep an eye out for Matt's work because I'm sure he's got a lot more in his bag ready to go. But until next time, guys, thank you for checking out the Halftone Effect, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, everyone. That's it for the 100th episode. Thank you to our guests, Bradley Aiden, Ruben Romano, Angie Spice, and Matthew Kime. All amazing creators that are doing wonderful things out in the community. And it was great to have Matt on at the very end to talk about the project that him and I have been working on for the last 12 months. That's still in the progress now, but you can check that out. There will be a link in the description below to go and follow that on for pre-orders when they go live. We're hoping to get that later on this year. But it has been an absolute joy to get this podcast to you guys and to do this tonight and to be able to talk to these people and have them on. Like I said at the start of this video, it's been an amazing experience hosting this podcast over the last 8 years. It started off a very, ambitious, small little podcast that I'd hoped to grow, and we did do that. And I'm so happy and proud of what I've been able to create with all the guests, the people who have enjoyed listening to it, the people we've met at conventions who have got into comics and created their own comics thanks to this podcast. That in itself to me is such a huge, gratifying moment to have that happen. And I think that, in some way or form, this podcast might return. We are doing it, and we might come back in some way or form. I'm not sure for this it's, a great last season. We've got a stack more episodes of the podcast to watch, and we hope that you can check them out. So thank you again, guys. Thank you for checking out this episode. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube page. Leave a review on iTunes and Spotify. If you listen to it on SoundCloud, you're listening to this on SoundCloud, then definitely, hit a like, and, we do appreciate that support. This has been a free service. We really look after the comics community and try and give back to the community that gives so much to us. So, thank you again for listening to the 100th episode of the Halftone Effect, and we'll be back again next week. So thank you. And until then, bye-bye.